You see my face all the time. How about one of the faces of college football instead today? Welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan. College football is basically here. We're in fall camp. The projections and predictions are out there, but they're about to lace them up. They're about to put on the pads and really start hitting and guiding us through it all, as he does every year from now until they crown a championship, is our next guest, an ESPN legend, the host of the network's Emmy award-winning College GameDay, longtime play-by-play commentator, the host of ESPN's college football playoff rankings and selection shows. He's covered the World Cup, Wimbledon, March Madness, Triple Crown, the NBA draft, everything. The new show, Official Visit, is a 5-part series where he travels across the country for one-on-one conversations with some of the top head coaches and quarterbacks in the nation. Episodes with Indiana's Curt Cignetti, Ole Miss's Trinidad Chambliss, Mario Cristobal at Miami, someone who is synonymous with college football and part of your Saturday morning routine in the fall. And he's one of us from Alabama, the one and only Rece Davis. Welcome, Rece, and thank you for doing this.
Oh, Ben, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Rece, Official Visit, great stuff so far. Really cool way to get hyped for the 2026 season. You're talking to several of the faces of college football as well, and I love that you're spending time with head coaches in really an unfiltered way. It seems like the coaches that you've featured so far really want to share their real selves, their personalities, who they really are in these conversations, whether it's coffee and sharing a meal with Mario Cristobal, who really seems in his element in that conversation with you, talking about his family's history and relationship with Cuba, or grinding tape with Curt Cignetti. He tells you, quote, "I don't golf anymore. I don't jog anymore. I don't hunt and ski, fish. I'm a football coach." And Rece, you see the smiles on their faces, these guys who usually are very serious on the sideline. You've covered college football for decades. You've interviewed a lot of coaches. But what's something about that profession and the people who embark on that job that felt new or surprising to you when you sat down with them for this show?
I don't know that it felt new necessarily, but I do think that there is a desire for many of them to show some balance and show some, for lack of a better term, humanity or personality, because I think that we, a lot of times as people who cover the sport or fans, view them as robotic, as, being totally myopic and consumed, and they are. Most of them are in terms of being consumed, but it's not the only facet to their personality. And, to take Cignetti, for example, I mean, Cignetti loves his family deeply and loves spending time with them and going on family trips and things like that. It's so, I think that we get the notion in our heads sometimes that these coaches care nothing about anything else other than designing the perfect zone blitz scheme or the right call on 3rd and 4. And for the most part, there are other facets to their personality. And I think the way media has evolved and the way branding has evolved for them, and it helps recruiting, if they can, show that there's a little more to them than that they're real live human beings, just like the rest of us. And I think that's been part of the appeal to it, whether it's someone who is consumed by his job to the point that he enjoys the free time that he gets. Like, as Curt joked, until his wife calls him and says, "Okay, it's time to come home in the summer." He comes in, he's looking for trends in football. Mario Cristobal, one of the ideas we had, and he told me he would take me another time. Maybe we'd scout it out without cameras first before we decided to go to one of his favorite Cuban spots. I was going to go, he still does jujitsu and martial arts. And so we were like, okay, this is a good idea. And he decided, maybe let's do this instead. So I was like, I said, I know I would have gotten killed. I've never done anything like that, but I was kind of looking forward to it. And he goes, "I'll take it." He goes, "Let's go scout it out without the cameras the first time, and then let's see how it goes. And then we'll do it." So at some point, I look forward to doing that with him. But there's these guys, while they are consumed with winning, and there can be a public facing side sometimes that, seems a little bit oblivious to everything else around them. I don't think that's always the case. They are aware of how they're perceived. They're aware of the impact that they have on the players that they coach. And while the dynamic has shifted tremendously because of NIL and the ability to pay players, most of the coaches are still driven by that and still get great reward. And I know certainly the 2 that we visited with this year, 3 that we visited with this year, all feel that way. And Mario and Kurt and Joey McGuire from Texas Tech.
Yeah, the Cristobal and Signetti episodes are such great contrast because you've got these coaches who are in the national championship facing each other, and they obviously have very different personalities. They like to spend their time doing different things. Like, I mean, again, Signetti, again, grinding tape. This is who I am with the remote in my hand, and you're going to watch this with me, and we're going to break this down. In Cristobal, I've never seen him looser before. So, and there's obviously a lot of trust between you and these coaches and these subjects. I mean, I know that ESPN always has like great relationships with these programs, the way that y'all cover them on game day and throughout the season and cover their games. But with you in particular, Rece, I mean, it seems like you have built a lot of trust with people who are coaching at the highest level. Is that comfort mutual in the sense that you're comfortable talking to people who are doing this job because they seem comfortable talking to you?
Well, I mean, I hope so. I think most of it is rooted in the fact that hopefully I've put together a career in which I have been fair to people and have treated them with respect, because I've said this a lot of times. I don't really have any friends who are still coaching. That's not some conscious decision from some old school journalistic ethos. It's just, I define friends. Friends are people who know where you live, know your kids' names. Maybe, if you're so inclined, you go on vacation with them or something like that. That's how I define friends. But I am friendly with a lot of these guys, and have been treated well by them and have tried to accordingly treat them well and fairly. And they know that at times, criticism's going to come with the territory, because they're certainly not shy about letting me know if I've said something that they don't agree with or that they think maybe was unfair. And all of those things are kind of part and parcel of the job that we do. But I do think that the comfort comes from, hopefully, at least from my end, I know it does, a mutual respect with those guys, and the ability to want to use game day as a vehicle to allow them to showcase different sides of themselves, and also showcase that they are legit coaches, which is what they want more than anything else, to be able to prove their worth on the field, and then to be able to show how they've done it through some of the things that we do that might explore a different facet of them on game day.
Rece, how about time you've spent with Kalen DeBoer? You shared the game day set with him a few times. We're in year 3. We know what the expectations are in Tuscaloosa. We know whose program he inherited, but he's coming off of an SEC championship game appearance. He reached the college football playoff quarterfinal in year 2. He appears to be on the right trajectory, but there's always scrutiny with this job, and he knew that when he took it. He's talked about that. Mm-hmm. What do you see in the Alabama program with Kalen DeBoer's fingerprints now on it these last few years?
Well, I got a chance, not for the official visit series, but I went down and visited with Kalen and with the team. I think it was in June. So I got a chance to be around them for an afternoon. I sense a great deal of unity. I sense a great deal of loyalty, both from the coaches toward the players and vice versa. And I think that will serve them well. Nick has talked about this a lot too. The transition was difficult, not just because, Nick's the greatest coach who ever lived, and that's the greatest dynasty that the sport has ever seen, but also they lost. I mean, Nick always has the number right on the tip of his tongue, but what was it, 26, 27 guys or whatever, that it was a big roster turnover immediately. Alabama, had a lot of young guys the last couple of years. Now, that's not to, excuse some of the performances, and I think that they're still a little bit embarrassed about how the Rose Bowl went. Not that Indiana beat them. Indiana was a significantly better team than Alabama last year, but I think just sort of the way it unfolded, I think that is sort of stuck with them a little bit. So I think there's a lot of unity and belief there. And the one thing I'll say about Kalen is, the accomplishments speak for themselves. He is confident in his system, his belief, and his methodology of doing things. His demeanor is, a little bit different than some of the coaches at Alabama that have been successful. Now, all of these wonderful human beings, but, I would say it's probably a fair observation to say that Coach Bryant and Coach Stallings, and Coach Saban maybe outwardly were a little gruffer at times, but all had great senses of humor, all had great senses of wanting the best for their players. And I think that's something that Kalen has in common with them. This guy's an elite coach, man. And, it's a different era of college football. Doesn't mean Alabama's expectations should change, but it just means that the way programs are going to accomplish their objectives are different than the old days, and everybody's sort of learning how to adjust. If you need any proof of that, yes, Kurt Cignetti is a savant and a brilliant coach. Indiana just won the national championship with a perfect season. And prior to his arrival, and Hoosier fans are sick to death of me saying this, and I don't say that to cast aspersions at them. I say it to emphasize the accomplishment. No program had lost more games in the history of the sport than Indiana. Now, that's not true at the moment, but when he arrived, it was. Now they're the national champions. Now they are as I said in the official visit series, they are the apex predators in college football's, deep waters. It happened in 2 years. Prior to this, I'd always said the greatest turnaround I'd ever seen was Bill Snyder at Kansas State. They were in a similarly moribund situation there when he took over, but that was a long, slow build because of the time and how you had to do it. And now that was a long way of saying not that Alabama fans need to diminish expectations or that Alabama's administration needs to diminish expectations or that Kalen needs to diminish his own expectations. It's just how it's accomplished, and the ability to dominate every year is different. Now, I said different because it wasn't easy when Nick did it because nobody had ever done it before. Nick adapted perfectly to his circumstances and used his genius and his brilliance in order to dominate the landscape. Just exactly how you do that now is what everybody's still figuring out because of, the roster transition and cap management and all of those things that are different now. Doesn't mean it's harder now. That's one thing I think I don't agree with. It was always hard. It's never been easy to win a single championship, let alone win, 6 and 17 years or whatever it was and play for 3 more and maybe a break here and there and played for another couple of them. That you think that was not easy. It's just things are different. People are adjusting. More people are investing in challenging now. At Indiana being case in point. Ole Miss being another case in point. So all of these things have just altered the landscape, and there's no magic button you can push. You have to have commitment to your process, commitment to your belief system, and I think that the Kalen has all of those things, and it might look different than when Coach Stallings put it together. It might look different from when Coach Bryant or Nick put it together, but that doesn't mean it can't be effective his way too. So it's, I think he's a terrific coach. I've used this example a lot. Obviously I had no idea because he had no idea, Nick was going to step down. But when the year we went to Washington with College GameDay, the year that Washington played for the national championship, when Kalen was there, I didn't know him at all. And I tried to make it a point to get to know him a little bit on that trip, spend a little time around him and with some of his former players from his earlier days to try to get to know him, because my impression was as long as this dude is at Washington, they're going to be really good, and I need to get to know him. And I've enjoyed getting to know him, and I think he's a terrific coach. I think it was a terrific choice by Alabama, and I think he's going to have great success for his entire career there and his entire career, whatever that may hold long term. And I rather imagine that with the commitment they've made and the commitment he's made, that long-term future is in Tuscaloosa.
Well, to your point about Nick Saban, if it was easy being Nick Saban and if it was easy to do what Nick Saban did, then everybody else would have done it. And I mean, if Indiana is the blueprint for the modern college football landscape, then that should reassure teams like Alabama and others who are ranked where they are preseason, because I believe Indiana was 20th going into the season last year before they went off on this perfect season, like you said. So champagne problems when 11th is Alabama's lowest preseason ranking in a couple of decades, and they clearly have a strong roster. The narrative, though, is that they're struggling to keep up in the NIL arms race. I mean, experts think they'll have a good season, but more like 9-3 or 8-4, which is blasphemy in Tuscaloosa if you talk to the locals. But Kalen DeBoer has said that he and the team are very well aware about any doubt or criticism facing this team right now. Nick Saban, he says maybe Alabama can fly under the radar. Maybe they can sneak up on some people. Alabama will always be Alabama. But Rece, what do you think of this version? One that people might be doubting for the first time in a while.
Oh, I don't think there's any question that they're being doubted, and some of the doubt they've earned. A lot of the doubt they earned from the performance in the Rose Bowl, and I think that has stuck with a lot of people. And then there were other kind of fits and starts, and I think the difficulty running the ball, but it wasn't just so much statistically the inability to run the ball. It was just a perceived lack of being physical, and also lack of at least I'm not at practice every day. I can't say there was a lack of attention to detail in practice or understanding, but what it looked like as you watched the games where guys unblocked, like that there were communication difficulties. Now there could be a billion reasons for that, and maybe my just trained enough eye to be dangerous might totally misunderstood what I thought I saw. But I think those were the types of things that Alabama's coaches wanted to address, that the players certainly wanted to answer for. I think the overhaul in the offensive line and with the offensive line coaching staff was probably indicative that they felt like they needed a new voice, new approach, and maybe they have, while they certainly had good players last year, maybe they have athletes, body types, different things that fit a little better with what Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer would like to do on offense. So I think all of those things can factor together to give Alabama a chance to maybe exceed some expectations. I do think they can fly under the radar. I do think they can sneak up on people. I do think they can be overlooked in terms of not getting attention until one of two things happens. Either they lose a big game or they win a big game. And as soon as either of those things happen, they're going to get plenty of attention. Now, and I don't want to just commandeer the mic here, but something else you brought up that I do think is true in terms, the perception of trying to keep up in the NIL race. Alabama has a ton of wealthy boosters. Alabama has revenue at its disposal. Alabama has access to money, but they don't necessarily have a host of billionaires sitting in the offing, ready to elevate them all the way to the very top and outspend everybody in their path. In fact, a lot of schools are in that boat. There are just a few who might have access to that. And you wonder whether people want to invest in the way that they're being asked to invest right now. So how long will it last? Now, I don't buy all of the hand wringing about how this is unsustainable financially, because somehow they keep sustaining it. And not only sustaining it, but enhancing it. So that seems a little bit sky is falling to me. But there probably is a better way to operate and a better way to run it. But I do think it's probably a fair observation that is Alabama the wealthiest school out there in terms of being able to apply resources to have the highest paid roster in the sport? Probably not. Do they have enough to be competitive? Yes. So if you're doing that, and by competitive, I don't mean competitive to be 8-4. I mean competitive to get to the playoff and succeed in the playoff, over the course of time. So what do you need there? You need structure. You need a guy who knows what he wants. You need an excellent coach. They have that. Because I'll tell you this is one thing that made Signetti bristle. The idea that Indiana went and outspent everybody and bought a championship is just flat wrong. That's just not true. And I remember he said to me the day after the national championship game, I did a sit down with him. He goes, this idea that we're at the very top of payroll, he goes, we're not. He said, now look, we paid guys. He said, I'm not saying that, we did this on cheap. He goes, but we're not at the top. He said, we're not close to the top. Now they're competitive. and they developed their system. They have the right coaches. They found the players that fit their culture. And I think all of those things are things that Kalen DeBoer is doing in Alabama. And I think they'll have an opportunity to have great success under his leadership.
Rece, you're the host of College Game Day. Alabama's previous coach, Nick Saban, joined the show a couple of seasons ago. You've covered his career. You've interviewed him for many years before you started working with him. But now that you're colleagues, and I'm sure it can't be summed up with one story or descriptor, how would you describe your experience with him and what he's brought to College Game Day?
First of all, I thought he would be great. I didn't know he would be extraordinary immediately, and he has been. I think you see from Nick every week for our show what made him great as a coach. He does not want to half step through anything. He wants everything to be the very best it can be. He wants to be the best he can be. He wants feedback, critique. How could we improve that? How could that segment have been better? What could I have done to explain that tape better? What part of this film would have been more understandable for the people? And he's certainly been able to showcase a great personality and sense of humor that he has. I think hardcore Alabama fans knew he was funny, because even the rants at the mic back in the day, there was he meant them. I'm not trying to suggest he meant every word he said, but there was always like an underlying sense of that chop busting, razor sharp wit that he has to it too. And, it wasn't as overtly telling a joke or, taking an overt jab like a Steve Spurrier. But if you really listen to the rant, when he was saying, you guys had us, gone, there was like an element of humor and personality to it that I think people who were really watching closely totally understood. And he's been able to completely let that out on College Game Day, and it has made all of us better. And just his presence makes everybody better too, because he's going to do everything in his power to make it the best it can be. And you want to do that too. And in my position, you want to show leadership in doing that as well. And, I think all of us have benefited mutually from working with him, because he's been just such an extraordinary teammate and such an extraordinary addition to the show. And obviously his credentials are, unmatched in the coaching world.
Rece, you hear about these welcome to the NFL or welcome to the big league stories from players and coaches all the time. Was there a welcome to working with Nick Saban moment for you on the show or behind the scenes, or a story that you like to tell about him?
Okay. I don't think he'll get mad if I tell this one. It was pretty good. Sometimes he wants, in the course of discussion, you have to, and you don't bat 1,000 on these, but sometimes you have to know when to move on. It's not just a time thing. And I think people who aren't familiar with television have this concept that the producer is in your ear telling you either what to say or what to talk about or when to go, but that's not really the way it works. And you have to have a little bit of a feel for when a discussion has run its course. You also have to help your producer and director in terms of if you need to hit a break by a certain time so you don't miss the top of the hour, that maybe a discussion has to be, curtailed a little bit. Well, and this is not just Nick, but all of the guys, but particularly Nick in the early going, his first year, he would kind of like put his finger out and tap his finger out, like if he wanted back in, sort of a nonverbal, I got something else I'd like to add here. And it's Nick Saban. It's going to be brilliant. It's going to be worthy, but, I think we were at Texas, or the Georgia-Texas game one year, and he put his finger out, and I kind of, waved him off and, went on and went on to the next thing or whatever. So we go to break, and he goes, "Hey, man, I had my finger out." I said, "I know, I saw it." He goes, "Well, I had something else to think would be good." And I'm like, "I'm sure it was, but, hold on to it, and we're going to come back and talk about this game there." I had to go, but like there was the expectation there at that time. But to show how smart he is and how adaptable and what a good teammate he is, he was like, "Oh, okay, I got it." Because his initial thing was, well, he didn't see me. He didn't realize I wanted back in. I had something really good to say. And he did, because he always has something good to say. But then, I was able to say to him, "Right, I'm sure you did. I had to go because of this reason, or I felt like the discussion had run its course right now. But remember, when we come back in the H's or the I's, we're talking about this game again, and that'd be really good there. And so things like that, I think he's elevated the entire room around the meetings, and he's been very, very wise and smart while still maintaining that demeanor and that presence that he has and exuding leadership, because he walks into a room and just exudes leadership, right? But he's also been very gracious and very team oriented, and it really gave you an insight and how good he was at building teams, because he makes everybody in there feel as if their role is vital and that they should want to do it to the best of their ability. And he doesn't do it by giving all of these wild pep talks. He does it through humor. He does it through example, and he does it through, asking really, really good questions. We had a producer sitting in for a regular producer one week who had to sit there, and he said to her, and it become a catchphrase in there. He said to her, Michelle, he goes, I think the one thing you need to do with this group, and he was joking with her, because the meeting had kind of, people were joking around. It was, it was all good. It was kind of, it'd gotten a little bit off the rails in a fun way. And so Nick says to her, Michelle, what you need to do is you need to confront and demand. So that's become like a catchphrase in there now. It's like confront and demand, especially if you get a chance to jab him with it. If you say something, hey, Nick, I'm just confronting and demanding here, So, but he's been phenomenal, and to get to know him on a different level, and get to know Miss Terry on a different level, and really, his entire family, children, grandchildren, everybody has been really, really cool. And they've been such an awesome addition to our group.
You waved off Nick Saban, and you lived to tell the tale. I'm impressed.
Yeah. I waved off gently. Let's put it that way. Waved off gently. We're just like, yeah, okay, we'll get to it.
Not like Draymond Green waving off Kevin Durant.
No. Not in. There was not. It was in this case. I was neither confronting nor demanding. I was just like, wait.
You got to move it on.
Just hold it. Hold it a minute. We'll get there.
A couple more for you, and we'll get you out of here. A couple of years ago, you did a piece, an intro about a then newfound Alabama acronym, LANK, and Pat McAfee and the rest of the panel about lost their minds on set, and you handled your business. You're a pro, but that clip went viral. What do you remember about it?
I didn't have any idea there was an alternative meaning. I mean, I'd followed it all year, and I knew about the T-shirts, and I knew that Jalen and Terrion Arnold had sort of adopted this phrase, and they had made really popular gear about it. And we were in Pasadena when that happened, and there were fans, there were all kinds of people walking down the street in Pasadena with LANK shirts on and various things. And first of all, I didn't know that everybody didn't know this, like on the set, or wasn't totally aware of everything. So I had no idea what they were talking about. So I just had to play it off. I had no clue. So we roll the sound of whatever I was leading to, and we were not going to commercial break then. And I said, "What is this?" And Desmond's like trying to gently tell me, and I view myself as a relatively intelligent guy and perceptive, but I wasn't getting it. I didn't understand what he was talking about. And I was like, what? I was like, they've said this the whole time. And so we go on, we finish the segment. And so then finally we get in commercial break, and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And Desmond goes, because, Joey Galloway was in with it. Joey was no help, and with it. And Pat is just so awesome in those moments. Like, he can capture those viral moments and make them hilarious. So finally Desmond just goes, okay, my man, listen. And I was like, oh, I didn't have any idea. I thought it was just exactly what they said it was when they did the shirts. That was all I knew about it. At first, I was a little bothered, because I was like, hey, man, you guys know there's only one guy that could have had his career ruined there. It's me. But then after a while, I mean, people have seemed to gotten such a kick out of it that even now, I'll occasionally get stopped in an airport or someplace and people will mention it.
We're going to do some quick ones real quick before we get you out of here.
You got it.
Celebrity guest picker where you actually got starstruck.
I don't know if starstruck's the right word. My favorite one is Ken Jeong, because he's hilarious. But the one that I really loved, or among the many, John Goodman, because the best movie ever made was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And he was Big Dan Teague.
The Cyclops in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
He said he would have brought his eye patch if he had known I was such a fan of the movie.
I love that. Game day atmosphere where you really said, I can't believe I'm here.
Two, Cal and Washington State, because I knew Washington State would be great because they've been on a quest to have the show for so long. Cal, I thought would be pretty good because I've been there for basketball. I had no idea it would be like either the best or at least tied for first or second with Wazoo.
If you could pick one stadium to watch a game, what is it?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, everybody loves their alma mater. I love coming back to Tuscaloosa. So for this exercise, let's say you can't choose your alma mater. I would probably say just the whole atmosphere, the smells, the mist rising, everything. Probably LSU Saturday night.
Fair enough. You were an RA at the University of Alabama. Which dorm and what's the wildest thing you let them get away with?
Patey Hall. There were a few things. During Dead Week, one week, I'd been out studying someplace, and I was the fifth floor captain my last year being there, and I'm riding up the elevator and I hear a roar, and I think I'm going to kill those guys. And when the elevator doors opened in front of me, two guys rolled past me fighting. Someone else came around the corner. It looked like something out of a ridiculous slapstick movie. Somebody had spaghetti all over them. Something had happened. Somebody had gotten hit with a water balloon, outside a window, and they came up to do something about it. And people were walking in the halls, not, just like going to get their food or whatever. And it absolutely turned into chaos. I was pulling guys off of other guys. Not that I'm some tough guy, but trying to break up fights and try to keep from, having to call the authorities and all of that stuff. So that, and then one night I came back and they had, it sounds like Animal House, I know, but I came back one night and they had taken somebody's car. I can't remember why, but they had removed all of the tires and put it up on blocks. So
sounds like college.
It does sound like it.
Yeah. Best game you saw while you were a student at Alabama?
Okay. I was about to say that's easy. I was there for the Van Tiffen field goal, but I think the other one, because of having grown up there, was the 86 game against Notre Dame, because Alabama had so many heartbreaking losses to Notre Dame. And the fact that, Cornelius Bennett hitting Steve Berline, beating Notre Dame for the first time in my late great friend Lou Holtz's first year at Notre Dame, that was probably those two games were the most exhilarating ones I saw there.
The next great college football coach is?
Do you find Cignetti is already great because he won it?
So do you think that he reaches another level as a great coach?
I mean, I think he's kind of already there for all that he's won and what he's done at Indiana. So if you take Kurt out of it, because if you establish him as already great, you're kind of looking, and I would even argue that you would kind of keep DeBoer, Sarkisian, Lane, in that group as already established. So you're probably looking for a young one. So I'm going to say John Sumrall. I'll say John Sumrall will be the next great one. I've heard a lot of good things, so I don't know him very well yet. I've heard a lot of great things about Will Stein too. But if I had to choose one, I'd probably say Sumrall.
Doesn't like turf in his weight room. All right, last one. Number one bucket list guest for official visit.
Oh, man. I don't know. You stumped me, Ben. I mean, I feel like I was going through my head and I was like, we got a lot of these guys. So I think a lot of them have been tremendous so far. We got a chance to see a lot of different things. I mean, we didn't call it this, but we did a lot of guys last year too. So I'm not sure who the bucket list guest would be for an official visit that's actually in college football. That's a good one. That's a tough one. Do you have suggestions? Do you have a multiple choice?
I think look, access is never a problem for Rece Davis and ESPN. So the good news is that y'all can probably get pretty much whoever you want. How about an extended Nick Saban episode? Another Nick Saban feature where you guys have a conversation. If you do another extended with Kalen DeBoer, we'll keep it Alabama. We'd love to see that too, the way you've had these sit downs with the guys so far. So I think you're on the right track. Let's say that.
We do things away from there. Maybe we go maybe we do one with Nick at some point and like go to some of his businesses and like, like spend the ultimate day with Nick Saban. You check in with the car dealership, you go out on the boat, and then you play some golf or something.
You're going to play some golf. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. All right. Well, watch Official Visit with Rece Davis on the ESPN and its digital platforms. College GameDay will enter its 40th season in 2026, kicking off September 5th from LSU, your favorite place to watch a game, marking the show's 500th show. Unbelievable. He's the host. We love watching him. An Alabama legend, Rece Davis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben.